Hey 49ers fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome into Chat Sports, and today, let's take a look at 4 free agents the 49ers could sign if they were to lose some of their own top free agents. We know Arik Armstead, Jimmie Ward, Emmanuel, right? These are the players that they're going to try and re-sign. But if they're unable to, I want to give you guys some names that we can go ahead and potentially sign with our limited cap space, starting with a defensive tackle. How about Tim Jernigan out of Philadelphia, who the Eagles are most likely not going to re-sign? And when you use Sheldon Day and Earl Mitchell as unrestricted free agents, some depth on the defensive line is very, very important. He's a great run stopper inside, a very smart player. The reason why he's going to be so cheap, though, because he has dealt with injury, has not played a full 16 games in a couple of years up there in Philadelphia. So cheap and good depth. I think he'd be one of the better backup defensive tackles in the National Football League, especially on our defensive line. 49ers could always use more interior defensive help. Now, I know that you hear that and you go, we were like the best interior defensive line last year. That's true, but you are going to lose somebody, whether it's Armstead or somebody else, and so bringing in some defensive line help would be very, very good overall. Just 9 games last year, 10 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and 2 sacks. And the depth chart behind, I guess you could say, the defensive tackle depth chart looks kind of like this at the moment. But again, guys like Sheldon Day are going to be free agents. Solomon Thomas could be traded. So whenever you look at the depth chart right now, you can see some holes that could eventually come in the next couple of days and weeks, and Tim Jernigan could go ahead and fill that up. I do think that this is a smart move for the 49ers. I think it's a move that they will take a look at. But again, if they were to re-sign Buckner and then go ahead and of course, re-sign Armstead, then the money kind of dries up a little bit. And if you need to go ahead and penny pinch for a rotational defensive line player, Tim Jernigan could make a lot of sense. Quick ad break here. I'm curious what you guys think in terms of what free agent would you guys like to sign the most? Out of all the free agents, which free agent would you guys like to sign the most? I'm going to read your comments. I'm very curious to see how split all of our Niner fans are out there. All right, well, and moving on. How about one that, to me, I think a lot of people are not talking about as being one of the better free agents targets out there in the secondary, but would make a lot of sense here in San Francisco. Has got to be the cornerback Bradley Roby. So he is fantastic in the slot, would add some incredible depth. And the 49ers, I mean, do they still have questions at cornerback? I feel like, personally, and I bring this one up, and I bring up Bradley Roby because I think a lot of you guys think that there are questions in the secondary. I feel really good about Emmanuel Moseley. I feel really good about Richard Sherman. I mean, those 2 cornerbacks, in my opinion, are going to be one of the better secondaries in the National Football League for many years to come. Now, Sherman will eventually age out, and we understand that. But at the same time, you ask about Emmanuel Moseley, a guy who didn't play a ton last year, especially early on. Whenever he filled in, especially in the 3 playoff games, I thought played very, very well. Now, if you disagree, well, let's say that you don't like them tendering K1 Williams and you want to get some extra bodies in there, just in case Moseley starts to struggle, we don't have to go to Ahkello Witherspoon, then Bradley Roby is 100% your guy. Here is your depth chart right now in terms of the cornerbacks. You got Sherman, Moseley, K1 Williams, and Ahkello Witherspoon. So it feels like, at least in a nickel situation, when you have a slot corner, you go Sherman, Moseley on the outside, and then Williams on the inside. Bradley Roby has played slot almost his entire career and has been absolutely fantastic at it, but can also bounce outside and showed that during his time in Houston. Now, Houston has said they're going to make Bradley Roby a top priority. They want to go ahead and try and re-sign him, but that doesn't mean they're actually going to re-sign him. Actually, all the research I did for all these different players, every single team was like, oh yes, this so-and-so was one of our top players that we want to go ahead and re-sign. Oh, we're going to make sure that we bring back Bradley Roby. Well, they say these things, and then they don't necessarily mean that's going to be true. So I like the idea of Bradley Roby. I'm curious to see how much he's going to command, because he's not one of the top corners. He's not Byron Jones. He's not James Bradbury, but still, he has been productive in the slot and has been very, to me, reliable in terms of one of the lesser-known corners who still play very, very well in the National Football League. Question for you guys here, a little betting question. Do you guys trust the 49ers corners as they are right now? That means, do you trust Sherman? Do you trust Witherspoon? And, of course, do you trust Emmanuel Moseley? And I guess throw in K1 Williams in there as well. Do you trust them to be the corners of the future? Type Y down below for yes. Type N down below for no. Quickly, before we move on, the 49er hats are back, baby. I mean, we got some crazy good deals right now at chatsports.com/49hat. Links down in the description. As you're seeing flashing your screen right now, it's all authentic and it's all great stuff. It's not just your typical, trucker Niner hat. This is some really good stuff overall. If you guys are looking for some Niner swag, especially as we get into those hot summer months, you're out on the golf course, you're doing whatever you need to do, these are the hats to go ahead and jump all over. They are at discounted prices right now as well. So chatsports.com/4, 9, and then hat, 49 hat. It's very, very simple. Not 49er hat. Important, right? Read the description. 49 hat overall. Okay. keep going here. Some bigger names, which would be harder to get, but there's a way to go ahead and get them if we were to lose some of our bigger names. Let me explain. So let's start with the defensive tackle, Leonard Williams. So this comes up, and you're hearing Leonard Williams, you're saying, Thomas, we're not going to get Leonard Williams. We need to sign Arik Armstead. Yes, I agree, and I want to sign Arik Armstead. But as we've kind of shown you guys before here on the channel, you could potentially, if Armstead's going to be too much, he wants, 11, 12, 17, 18, he wants like a ton of money in between $10 and $20 million, wherever it lands. If it's too much, the Niners could go ahead and franchise tag him, which would put him about $17 million a year, and then trade him to a team, we've hinted at, like, the Bucks could make sense, the Colts have a bunch of cap space, all these teams that have a bunch of money, you could trade him. So let's just assume the 49ers are going to do that. Now, I don't think that they will. Let me just say that again. I think we're going to re-sign Arik Armstead. He's going to become a 49er long-term. That's going to be fine. But if you were to lose him, heaven forbid, a guy like Leonard Williams from the New York Giants would make a ton of sense, can play both inside and outside. He's basically Arik Armstead light. Like, he's not as good as Arik Armstead, but he's younger, and he has a very similar mold in terms of Armstead playing inside and outside as well. And he's projected to only want $8 to $10 million this year, which is going to be millions less than Arik Armstead if we're looking at the overall, franchise tag versus going ahead and signing a guy like Leonard Williams. See, to me, he's the perfect fit. If you were going to have to replace someone if you replace Arik Armstead with someone, this is the guy that I would go ahead and do. Before we get to the stats, though, really, really quickly, this is something that the Giants are really trying to go ahead and re-sign. They've said, like I told you, their top internal priority, but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to be able to. The Giants have a ton of free agent cap space. They're going to throw some money at Leonard Williams, but again, if the unlikely happens and you had to go ahead and tag and trade Arik Armstead, I would make a run at Leonard Williams for sure, and maybe he'd want to play in San Francisco because we're winners instead of actually playing with the New York Giants. Last year alone, 46 tackles, 11 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, half of a sack, not 5 sacks, only half of a sack. You compare that to Arik Armstead, and Armstead's numbers are better. Let's be honest, 18 quarterback hits, 10 sacks, 54 tackles, but at the same time, you're playing in the Jets defensive front, which he has no help next to him, versus the Niner defensive front, where he has a ton of help next to him. So I think you could see Leonard Williams' numbers jump up there if the 49ers were actually able to go ahead and sign him. And your front four, without Armstead, and you replace it with Williams, is really good. Bosa, Buckner, Williams, and Ford, to me, would be one of the better defensive fronts still, even without Arik Armstead in the National Football League. Before we keep going, if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, we are approaching 18,000, really approaching 19 and 20,000 subscribers here on what has become, one of the biggest 49er channels on YouTube. It's crazy the amount of support that we have. We do a ton of stuff, especially during the off season. You're stuck at home, right? You're working from home. You want to be updated on all things sports, not just watch SportsCenter on repeat all day. That's what they're doing at ESPN. Give us a subscribe down below in the red zone subscription box, and also click the notification bell. That would help us out a lot. Final bit of news here. And here's another example of someone that you could go ahead and sign in free agency if you were to lose one of your players. How about the safety Ha Clinton-Dix if Jimmie Ward were to leave? Now, you're probably thinking in your head, Thomas, Ha-Ha's a better safety than Jimmie Ward, right? Because I recognize Ha-Ha's name maybe a little bit more than Jimmie Ward, because Ward was great last year, but I don't think got a lot of the spotlight in terms of what the national media talked about when we looked at our defense. So if you were to let Jimmie Ward walk, and I think there's a very real possibility that he does, you could either go ahead and start Moore at safety, who Ward has kind of given his blessing to be the replacement starter. But if you don't trust Tavarius Moore, you could go ahead and sign a guy off the street like Ha Clinton-Dix, who's going to be very, very cheap. Now, I mentioned earlier, who did you think was better last year? It was not Ha. Jimmie Ward was rated as the 6th best safety by Pro Football Focus. Ha was rated the 19th best safety by Pro Football Focus. But the stats, honestly, are not bad for Ha Clinton-Dix. More tackles, more receptions. He did have 2 fumble recoveries and 1 touchdown versus Jimmie Ward. 65 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 1 sack, and no interceptions. And so your secondary would now look like Sherman Moseley on the outside. Potentially, you want to put Bradley Roby or K1 Williams in the slot. Jaquiski Tart next to Ha Clinton-Dix. This would honestly be one of the better replacements to a guy if we were to lose him. Like, we can talk about who we'd replace Sanders with, and obviously Leonard Williams with, if you were to lose Arik Armstead. But if you were to lose Jimmie Ward and replace him with a cheaper Ha Clinton-Dix, that's one of the better offseason moves I could see the 49ers going ahead and making. Overall, though, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, he's not going to be a free agent, they're going to re-sign him, or, oh, we're going to re-sign this guy. I understand. I think we're going to try and sign as many of our own as we possibly can before we even look outside of our building at possible free agents. But I wanted to give you guys a video and not just throw out massive names like, oh, maybe we get Arik Cooper, or oh, why don't we go ahead and sign Jadeveon Clowney, because we can't afford those guys. Here are some names that you'll recognize. The NFL fans will recognize these names, but might not know a lot about, so I wanted to update you on them as potential targets for our 49ers as we enter free agency period, really coming up in just a couple of days, as the tampering period begins on the 16th, the legal tampering period, and free agency begins on the 18th, which will be wild and crazy and be very interesting because we have nothing else to watch right now on TV in terms of sports. Before we finish, which of these players would you think, or you do think should be the number one priority for our 49ers? If you'd sign any one of these 4 players, only one, which one would you guys go ahead and sign right now? I want to hear from you guys down below. As I always read the comments, I always want to see what you guys are thinking here as our 49ers are gearing up for the real, I guess not the real start of the offseason, but free agency in the new league year really kickstart things, and I think our 49ers are going to be active internally. We'll see what they do externally on the outside, looking in at different free agent targets as well. All the time we have for today for the 49ers Report, I'm Thomas Mott, signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day.